Welcome everyone to our IME's first free GAMSAT webinar for 2022. The GAMSAT is just under 2 weeks away. Talking to you guys off camera, it seems like a lot of you are sitting at GAMSAT for the first time. It's going to be an interesting experience for all of you because the GAMSAT has changed over the last couple of years. It's no longer a paper exam, it's now online. So for those of you sitting for the first time, you haven't experienced the dread of having to walk into a massive hall full of hundreds of people, squished like sardines doing a paper exam, that mental strain sitting there for 6 hours. But I guess now it's smaller rooms, cozier, you get earplugs as well. So it's a bit nice and cozy. But without further ado, my name's Hassan. So I'm the lecturer here at the Institute of Medical Education. Just a bit about the Institute. We've been around for a very long time. So we were previously METC Institute, so METC, but we rebranded recently, only a couple of months ago, because we were accredited by the Australian Medical Council to offer an interview exam for international medical graduates called the PESCI exam, which is the pre-employment structured clinical interview. It just means that if you're an international medical graduate who wants to practice as a doctor in Australia, there's many pathways. And one of those pathways is doing this exam so you can work as a GP in a clinic. And we do facilitate that. And the reason why it's massive is because we're kind of at the forefront of deciding which doctors, or not deciding, just making sure that we're the checkpoint that the doctors who are from overseas wanting to practice in Australia, that they have the right, they're suitable to practice in Australia. So it's a big deal. And that's one of the main reasons why we rebranded. Another reason why METC rebranded to the Institute of Medical Education is that METC represented, say, the old school kind of teaching. So COVID, I mean, the elephant in the room, has accelerated the technological advancements, or say remote learning. So as I just spoke to a couple of you off camera, we've got people from Ireland, we've got all across Australia. So it looks like, yes, GAMSAT is international, and it's fantastic that we can run these sessions for you guys remotely, and you don't have to come in person. So just a bit about me, just to make sure you guys are like, who's this guy? I have a background in medical research, so I have a PhD in medicine. Sorry, just before, yes, Rani, you can send the link to a friend who'd like to join. You definitely can. So the more the merrier, which is fantastic. And as well, this session is recorded, so don't worry, you will get the link in the next couple of days. So sorry, oh, hi, Ellen, just giving you the chance to chat. So as I was saying, so who am I? I'm not just some random dude. So I have a background in medical research. I've worked in a cancer research lab. I have a PhD in medicine. I've worked at the University of Sydney for about 4 years teaching in faculties of medicine and health, science and engineering. So I've marked hundreds and hundreds of essays, reports, you name it. I've been here at IME for a couple of years now. We've helped a great amount of students, a large number of students, get into medicine. So the good thing about our courses and programs is they're developed by doctors, surgeons, and university trained educators. So it's not just by med students. So this is actually developed by the best in the business. So you know that the content we're giving you today, it's the most relevant to the GAMSAT today. So that's the key here. Also, these sessions, we're hoping we're aiming for about an hour. I'm so sorry about the technical glitch with the with sending the link. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again when we offer this free webinar again next month. So the good thing is these webinars are offered monthly. So for free for you guys, we'll send you the link hopefully a couple of days in advance. And hopefully that's not going to be an issue. But we are aiming for about an hour. And if you can't stay for the full hour, don't worry. It's recorded and you will receive the link in the next couple of days. Just not tomorrow, because tomorrow is a regional holiday here in the Gold Coast. So our head office is here in sunny Queensland. We have a regional holiday, so it's a public holiday tomorrow. So you will receive the recording of the link next week. So don't worry about that. Now, before, I think we might as well just move on quickly now to just getting this out of the way. You can follow us on social media. So our social media pages have a lot of free material. It's not just today's session. So on our website, I'll show you in a second, you can find our free mock exam. You can find our essay generator. You can find a link to our interview stimulus generator. We also have the schedule for the webinars. If you find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn as well, there's lots of free material. Our YouTube page, which I'll show you in a second, it has answers to ACE practice exams. We post free questions on our socials as well. We have an Instagram and a TikTok where we post fun stuff. So if you want as many free content as you can, just look us up online, Institute of Medical Education, you'll find it. So I'll just show you quickly as well. If I just share my screen to, here we go. So if you were to just go to imemedical.com, so you just type that into your browser, just gonna move these out of the way, you can't see this. So imemedical.com, if you go to our courses, GAMSAT prep, we do also offer UCAT prep, medicine interview prep. Go down to GAMSAT preparation, and you'll see here, if you scroll down, you can find our free exam, our free Section 2 essay generator. So you have access to 68 essay themes, stimuli, with example arguments for and against the stimuli. So it's definitely very beneficial to your study. We have, for those sitting interviews very soon, MMI scenarios. So keep that in mind. And here's the webinar schedule as well. If you are interested, obviously, in packages and programs, we do offer that, but that's not the point of today's program. The point is to give you an idea of the GAMSAT. So you can find us on Instagram as well. As I said earlier, we post free content, updates, reminders. YouTube, if you go type in Institute of Medical Education, you can find our free videos on how to solve ACE practice exams and our own questions as well. So if I go back now to our PowerPoint. So just keep that in mind. The whole point is we want to make sure that everybody has access to all this free material, because we know sometimes, especially in this day and age, things are becoming expensive and it's not that easy to get access to education. So we're trying to give as much free education as possible to make sure that everybody who doesn't have the capacity or the money to get programs, we do offer programs, but if you can't afford it, at least we can offer the free stuff for you, so you do get some sort of support. So that's the key here. So all of that is out of the way, we can get on to our session. Today's session, we're going to look at a couple of things. So this is the first session, just give you an idea of, say, Section 1 and Section 3 type questions. So first, we're going to start off with how to improve your Section 1 vocabulary. I know a few of you haven't sat the GAMSAT before, but you will see in the GAMSAT, there's going to be a few questions, because generally in Section 1, you might get long passages, short passages, poems, autobiographies, newspaper articles, opinion articles. You could get questions like comics, that you have to define the comic via some specific term. That's what we're going to be looking at today. Looking at the nuances of definitions of specific words and how you can use them to answer sort of GAMSAT questions. In the future webinars, obviously, we'll go through other topics, whether it be poems or say comics or that sort of stuff. But today we're going to focus on improving your Section 1 vocabulary. And after that, we're going to look at tabular and graphical interpretation, a couple of examples of that, just to give you an idea of what to expect. And finally, we can address your questions. There is a Q&A function. If you do have any questions, you can post it there. We can go through it together. Today is supposed to be informal. I think I've given you the option to speak. So I think I have to click the button, but if you can't, you can type into the chat box, or you can put in a Q&A. So the whole point of today is I don't want to show you how smart I am. That's not the point. We wanted to show you, because we're assuming everybody is at different levels. We're going to offer you questions that anybody can try with as minimal preparation as possible, but they are going to still have the GAMSAT style. They're going to have that. They're going to be in a GAMSAT style. So you will be learning a lot today. Every question I give you today has a purpose. So just keep that in mind. So there's like a hidden agenda or some meaning that I want to push across. So I think what we can do is we can get started. And just a reminder, sorry again for the blunder with the link. If you can't stay for the whole session, it is recorded. You will receive the link next week to watch it. So section 1, vocabulary. What I'll do is I'll start a poll. And so the first question states, so it says, I have never been married, but I tell people I am divorced so they won't think something is wrong with me. Is an example of what type of humor. So it's either sarcasm, droll, burlesque, or dry. Now, the reason why I asked this question was because in the GAMSAT, they love to give you, say, a statement with a bunch of similar words with similar definitions, but little subtle differences. What I'll do is I'm going to start the poll. So I've started the poll here. Let's see what answers you guys can give. So is it sarcasm, droll, burlesque, or dry? I'll give you about a minute. And don't worry, we're going to go through the definitions in the next slide, but I just want to see what you guys think. So I think when the poll clicks onto 60 seconds, we'll probably see what your answers are. Okay, so we've got a couple of responses already. Fantastic. So we'll give you 30 more seconds to have a think about this. And by the way, the reason why I picked this, we're going to look at humor today because I guess humor is always a great icebreaker. It kind of lets your hair down. I mean, clearly not my hair, but if you've got hair, lucky enough to have hair, clearly you can do something about it. Okay, cool. We've got, one more person left to answer. We've got a couple of answers there. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I'll end the poll there. So we've got quite a few. So 80% of respondents went with droll and 20% went with dry. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to tell you what the correct answer is just yet, but I can probably ask, so why did you guys go with droll? So, or why did you go with dry? So I'll probably give you the chance. I'll ask you to unmute if anybody wants to let me know. So why did you guys pick your answer? Yep, Rani or?
Oh, I didn't think it was sarcasm, and I honestly didn't know what C meant. So that leaves me with the best choice of B, I think.
So you went with what? You went with droll or dry? Droll? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else do we have? We've got a droll because not burlesque. Burlesque sounds a bit frisky. Sarcasm, maybe not. And droll. Do you have any other answers from you guys? If not, I'll probably just go to the definitions. Okay, so I'll give you more of an opportunity to have a chat, so don't worry. I know it's like pointing at people, give us an answer, but we want to make sure that you all get to contribute. And the whole point is because I know a lot of students don't get the opportunity to have group study. So at least you've got strangers and who cares, right? You don't know who they are. They don't know who you are. But what we'll do is, so you guys pick the correct answer, but someone was right and someone was wrong. So there is the correct answer amongst your choices. So it is either droll or dry, and we'll go through the definitions now, and you can let me know what you think afterwards. So the reason why I asked this question is because in the GAMSAT, there's a lot of terms with nuanced meanings. So I'll give you an example. So you had the option of burlesque in the options previously, but burlesque it's not something raunchy or debauchery. Burlesque actually has a different meaning when it comes to comedy. So when you think of burlesque, people think of raunchy and debauchery. And what you're actually thinking of in terms of humor is ribald or blue comedy. Because ribald or blue comedy is risque, indecent, and unsubtle. That's what blue humor is. Whereas burlesque humor, it mocks or imitates a subject by representing it in an ironic or ludicrous way. So you can think of burlesque as something like a parody. So you guys would know that parodies, like for example, I mean, showing my age here, the Scary Movie series. So where they parody Scream, they parody all the scary movies. So that would be an example of burlesque. So anything that is a parody. So when it comes to surreal humor is more so things that what's the word? So it kind of deliberately violates causal reasoning, and it kind of has some illogical meaning to it. So the best way to describe that is like, for example, a caveman. A caveman has a mobile phone, so this is the prehistoric era. Mobile phone, but he can't call his telephone provider to complain that it doesn't have reception because they're not picking up. So like, it's funny because why does a caveman have a phone, and the fact that he has no internet reception is because he lives in the prehistoric era. So that's a surreal humor. Garfield comics is mostly surreal humor. So a lot of those cartoon comics, for example, Family Guy, surreal humor, like Stewie, a baby that can talk, the dog, Brian, that talks, so those sorts of things are examples of surreal. We had a comment here by Ramsha that they said it's not sarcasm because droll causes troll but not dry. That's a good point, because we are going to look at the definition of droll right now. So droll actually means amusing or witty, and it's in an unexpected or unconventional way. So this is important to know. Droll is unexpected or unconventional. So droll is actually from a French word meaning buffoon. So if you're ever going to think of droll, a droll is somebody that's, a buffoon, wild and being funny in a weird way. It's kind of like a jester, right? But have a think about the question we asked earlier. Is that actually droll based on this definition? But we'll go through all the other definitions and see. So that's what droll is. So then we've got deadpan, dry, and sarcasm. So this is another little nuance that you need to know. So deadpan and dry is you deliberately display emotional neutrality to contrast with the absurdity of the subject matter. So the delivery is meant to be ironic. Now, the difference between deadpan and dry and sarcasm is that sarcasm uses irony as well, but it uses it to mock someone. So the reason why this is a question that they'd love to ask in GAMSAT, because there's a lot of nuanced differences in meaning between these definitions. Whilst deadpan dry uses irony, sarcasm uses it in a contemptful way. So you're trying to mock someone. And then we become more nuanced here. Mordant often mocks someone as well, but mordant humor does it without irony. So you're quite literally mocking someone. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All these little nuanced definitions. And then finally, morbid and dark. When we talk about morbid and dark humor, as the name suggests, it's more depressing and deals with misfortune and death with a pessimistic outlook. So before we go on to the actual question we talked about earlier, do you guys have a question about these definitions? Anything that you'd like to raise or anything you'd like to point out? If you can't use your mic, you can send a message through the chat if you like. If not, we'll just go to the question and see what answer you guys would like to put forward. Okay, so if we go now to the question again, I have never been, let me just say, so I have never been married, but I tell people I am divorced so they won't think something is wrong with me. So are you guys going to stick with droll, or are you going to change to dry based on the definition? Or are you going to stick with dry, or are you going to change to droll? So I'll give you about 10 seconds and I'll reveal the answer. Alrighty. So the answer is, drum roll. The answer is dry. So let's just do a process of elimination here. When you sit the GAMSAT, a strategy to sit the GAMSAT is, I always look at it as you have because it's multiple choice, you have a 25% chance of being correct and a 75% chance of being incorrect. So you're actually more likely to find the incorrect answer than the correct answer. So let's just go through it. Remember sarcasm, I'll get my pen out here, pen. So remember sarcasm uses irony, but it conveys contempt. In this statement, it's just somebody saying, oh, I've never been married, but I just tell people I'm divorced. There's no contempt conveyed. They're just kind of taking a go at themselves, I guess. So sarcasm is incorrect. Now remember droll. Droll, it's amusing and witty, but it has to be in a kind of unconventional or a kind of eccentric way. So technically, he's not being eccentric or unconventional here. He's just saying it, oh, I've never been married, but he or she, sorry, but I tell people I am divorced so they won't think something's wrong with me. They're saying it in a very sarcastic, you know, not sarcastic, sorry. They're saying it in a very dull tone, in like a, you know, who cares tone. They're not saying it like a jester, ha 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 ha, you know, jumping around, being fun. So that's why you can rule out droll. Burlesque, there is no parody here. That's why it's dry. It's dry again because, as we said earlier, it's kind of, he's saying it in such a deadpan way, and it's just like, oh, you know, you can imagine that people, for example, me, I'm not married, but I probably cop the question every single day, why aren't you married? You know, and then you crack wise jokes like this. So that's the reason why I asked these questions. I'm going to give you another example with comics in a second, with little images. But the whole point is, you guys have to start developing your own, say, databases with all these definitions. I've used the example of humor here, but these 1%ers in the GAMSAT, if you were to have all the definitions down, have an example of each definition, and a sort of an example quote or image, it's these sorts of 1%ers that's going to get you a higher mark in section 1. Now, section 1 is notoriously difficult to score well in, mainly because it's humanities and that can ask you anything from a poem from the 1600s. But the whole idea is, people say, how do I improve my section 1 if it's impossible to improve section 1? These 1%ers is how you improve. Because you might get a question in the GAMSAT that gives you an image where you have to kind of determine whether something is ironic or sarcastic or X, Y, or Z. Now, do we have any questions before I move on to the comics? Nope. So what I'll do is, this is going to be a fun one. So there's 3 little comics here, and they all are some kind of humor. And these are the options we went through just beforehand. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, I can count. Fantastic. And there's 3 images. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you I'll give you 2 minutes. 2 minutes to decide whether this is ribald, burlesque, droll, dry, sarcasm, mordant, or morbid, and these as well. So I'll probably just practice question 2. I can start launching the poll now. Have a go. So I've launched the poll. Let us know what you think. So pick the most likely answer. And in the GAMSAT, you will definitely, I'm telling you from past GAMSATs, in section 1, they give you an image and they say, this image, or with a comment on the image, most likely represents A, B, C, D. What is it? So we've got a couple of answers in already. So when the timer hits 2 minutes, or if everybody answers, we'll probably stop the poll. So we'll see how you all go. Okay. So we've got one who's taken the plunge already, one of you, and we'll see how a couple of you else go. And by the way, I picked these photos. I had a lot of fun preparing this webinar because, especially for humor, so I had to look through a lot of comics to put this together. So being an academic is fun sometimes. It's not all just marking exams. So we've got a minute left. A few of you haven't finished yet. It means that you guys are thinking, which is fantastic. Ooh, we've got 2 voted. 3, fantastic. What, 15 seconds left? Two left. Come on, let's see what you guys have. All right, we'll stop it there. Come on, 2 more. Just guess. Are we gonna guess or are we gonna stop it? 5 more seconds. Okay, I'll just stop it. I'll end the poll there. Oh, we've got, all right, one more. All right, I'll just stop it then. Probably just like, nah, doesn't. Yeah, it is a bit tricky. So what we have, okay, for A, what do we have for A? We have, oh, it's a 50-50 split. So we've got burlesque and we've got morbid. Now, can you guys talk to me why you went with your answer? I'll probably give you a chance to have a chat. So why did you go with burlesque or morbid? So the floor is open. Let me know what you think. Or you can comment. So yeah, it's a bit hard to get you guys to, because it's like, oh, everyone's looking at me. So what do you guys think? Okay, so I'll probably just get the ball rolling. So remember what we said, one of them is correct. So it's either going to be morbid or I think you guys said burlesque. So remember what burlesque means. Burlesque is a parody. So a parody, is this parodying something? I mean, if it was ER and this was George Clooney was in the ER series, wasn't he? Fair enough, it'd be a burlesque. But in this instance, look at the topic. They're talking about, look at the markers. You've got morgue, death. The irony, obviously, that it's a lifesaver. Choked. So these are very, very strong terms. So we've got a comment here from Ramsha, morbid because it's a dark joke. That's 100% correct. So Ramsha, you're correct there. It's a very dark joke, but also what gives it away as well is that, look at these words. They're very strong. Choked, death, morgue, somebody's covered. You know, it's clearly a dark joke. They're trying to use humor. So talk about ironic, he choked to death on a lifesaver. I mean, it is irony, but they're using death as a joke here. So it's definitely, the answer is morbid. So if we move on to B, this one is, in my opinion, this one is obvious, but we had a very big mix here. We had ribald, droll, and morbid. So we had ribald, droll, and morbid. Okay. So it says, I'm afraid we've been on a wild goose chase, madam. It must be your tonsils. So we've got a comment here. Choking on the lifesaver, which I thought could be a ventilator, hence went with morbid. Well, yes, that is right, Ramsha. That's correct. That is why it's funny, because obviously if you choke on a lifesaver, it should bring you to life. But when it comes to this question, it says, I'm afraid we've been on a wild goose chase. We led on a wild goose chase, madam. It must be a tonsil. So you can see, obviously, he's told the patient to take her clothes off, and he's like at the end, well, maybe I have to check your tonsils, in a very obviously inappropriate way. And you can see she's taking her top off. So remember what we said. What would it most likely be? We've got a comment here from Rani. For B, I think it's ribald because of that indecency involved. You're 100% correct. So B is definitely ribald, because there's it's just crass. It really is crass. And you can see his smirk on his face, all the clothes, she's lost all her clothes, she's got a garter there. It's a very crass joke. So B is ribald because it's very dirty. So if we look at now C, I thought about this one this morning. I see there's actually, it could be 2 answers depending on the context given. So for you guys, we had majority sarcasm and somebody with mordant. Technically speaking, you're both correct. It is sarcasm, it is mordant. It's a bit hard because when I designed the question, I was like, me personally, I would say it's mordant. Because it says here from the x-ray, we've discovered that Billy has 2 stomachs. This would explain how he could be full from dinner, but still have room for dessert. He's flat out calling you fat, but he's just flat out calling you fat. So like you could argue, yes, it's mordant because you could argue there is an irony because he's just calling you fat, but you could also argue there is irony because he's using the example of 2 stomachs and is using the example of x-rays and showing, you know what, you actually do have 2 stomachs. So it's ironic that a doctor would be saying this, but it's a bit hard. So with section 1, humanities and GAMSAT, whoever designs the question decides on the answer. So this is why section 1's a bit difficult. With humanities, it's all about subjectivity. And me personally, I'd say it's mordant, but to be honest, in a lot of contexts, it could be sarcasm as well, because there is irony and contempt involved here. So one or the other is true, but if you get a question like this in a GAMSAT, you got to pray to someone because it's one or the other. So it's hard to decide. Do you guys have any comments on these comics? Yes, so Rani would like to look at the definitions. So here are the definitions again, just to prompt your memory. But do you guys have any other comments as well? Before we move on to the tables. So as I was saying before, so sarcasm and mordant, technically he was using irony to convey contempt, but at the same time, you could argue he was just flat out calling you fat. So you could say it's very, very critical of someone. Yes, there was subtleties of irony, but again, it's all about context. So I probably should have given more information with that. That's why I'd pay both marks, but ASA just wants one answer. So that's what they want. So if we move on now to interpretation of tables. So in the GAMSAT, especially in section 1 and section 3, you're going to be given, whether it be a table, a graph, some sort of figure, and you have to read the figure carefully, the legends carefully, and answer questions based on the figures. This is why GAMSAT is difficult for a lot of people, because a lot of the stimuli you receive is novel. So this table, I literally just went onto Google, went onto Nature Depository for Papers. So Nature is one of the world's best research journals, so scholarly journals. So Nature, if you haven't heard about it, think of the New York Times of science. So usually when I want to look for reliable data or information, I go to Nature. There's obviously a lot of other medical journals, like journals that are medical journals, like British Medical Journal of the British Medical Journal. Sorry, you've got New England Journal of Medicine. You've got Science. You've got quite a few. But what I did was I just went on and found a random paper from recently, because with these tables, I want to present you with information that's new. At least take home here is you might not understand or get the question wrong, but at least you've learned something. That's the whole point of the questions I asked today, or in the future webinars. You'd learn something. So a couple of the questions I'm going to ask, you're going to learn something, hopefully. So I just went down to supplementary information and I found this table. It was like 10 pages long because it included every country in the world, but I just cut it down. And what it tells us here, if we read the legend, it's given us the current, which they've defined as average for 1950 to 2000, and future, so 2041 to 2060, mean temperatures in degrees Celsius during the warmest quarter within national terrestrial protected area networks in select countries. So keep in mind, when you look at a section 1 and section 3 question, read the data carefully and read the legend carefully. So what I'll do is I'll give you guys, so for those watching at home, there's 2 questions for this topic. So you can pause screen here and pause screen here to get an idea on how to attempt the questions. But for you guys here today, what I'll do is I'll give you 2 minutes each question. So in the GAMSAT, generally speaking, in section 1, I think you should be taking about 1.5 minutes per question, and section 3, it's about 2 minutes per question. But what I'll do is I'll give you 2 minutes per question today, just to give you an idea to read the stimuli. So I'll give you 4 minutes, there's 2 questions. And at the 2-minute mark, I will move from this to this, and then we'll reconvene. I'm going to put an asterisk here for this question because there's something I want to go through with you, because I know some people who are experts in global warming and climate change and using equations and stuff might recognize this equation and say, hang on, there's a little bit of twist here, but I'll explain it after we go through the question. So what I'll do is usually I'll give you a couple of minutes and then we'll go through and work out between us your answers. So I'll give you 4 minutes. So at the 2-minute mark, I'll swap starting now. Sorry, I've got it here. So I'm going to launch it on the poll as well. So you can answer your questions in the poll. So when the poll gets to 2 minutes, I guess we'll move it along. We have 30 seconds left for this question. Hopefully you can put your answer in very soon, because I'll be swapping the question in 30 seconds. Okay, cool. We'll move on to question 2. Hopefully you can put your answers in. Oh, and by the way, the poll is anonymous, so I can't see who answered what, so don't worry. And your peers can't either. So it is 100% anonymous. So we have 1 more minute. So less than 30 seconds. Okay, we've got 10 more seconds left. Hopefully, yep, we have a couple more that need to answer. If you can put in your answers now, I'll stop it. I'll give you 5 more seconds to put in your answers to the last couple of people before I end the poll. I'll end it at 15. So if it's not in by 4:15, then it's not in. Alrighty. So okay, does anybody want to walk me through what they think, or just walk me through your process? Just tell me what you think about this table, what it's telling us, and why you went with your answer, say for question 1. Anybody want to take the lead? So I've given you a chance to have a chat as well, or you can put it in the comments section. So does anybody want to take the lead, or should I just get the ball rolling? Okay. So 5 more seconds. No. All right. So this table, the reason why I include this table is because there's a little trick, and in GAMSAT they love to trick you. Note that what we're looking at here isn't the increase in temperature of the country itself. Note that the question is specifically saying it's the increase in temperature during the warmest quarter within the protected area networks. So that's one thing to keep in mind, because we have here a couple of answers for question 1, very varied. We've got answers for B, C, and D. Now, the correct answer is one of those options, but I'll see if you can pick it out in a second. So keep in mind, it's telling us the temperature in the warmest quarter within the protected area network. So it's not telling you that this is the increase in the mean temperature of Afghanistan by 2050, the whole country. It's telling you that the actual protected area networks in Afghanistan during summer is going to go up to this temperature. Now, for those of you, this is why I said based on prior knowledge, we know that right now, so Afghanistan's northern hemisphere, in summer, my goodness, in Afghanistan, in regular Afghanistan, it'd be 30, 40 degrees minimum, right, in summer. But in the protected area networks in Afghanistan, you know that Afghanistan is very mountainous. So to have a current and a projected temperature of this during the warmest quarter, so during summer, it must mean that the protected area networks are in cooler climates. So it has to be somewhere that's in a cooler area. And in this instance for Afghanistan, it'd most likely be in the mountainous regions. So that's something to keep in mind. So clearly A is incorrect. So you all had the correct logic. That's incorrect because it says here that based on prior knowledge, Afghanistan has mean temperatures below 20 degrees. That's not true. It has mean temperatures below 20 degrees for national protected area networks. It doesn't have cool summers either. It's very hot. So that's why A is wrong. So B and D has the same logic attached to it. It's more of a percentage question. In section 1, they love asking these sorts of questions as well, giving you a bunch of information and you have to do a percentage question. So when we look at, for example, percentage increase, so especially in the GAMSAT, because you don't have a calculator, you have to make sure that you use assumptions and you round off. So Afghanistan, if we take a look here, 15.5 to 19. So it's about an increase of about, I'd say, 3.5, 4. So let's say it's increased by 4 points. So what you have to do is to find a percentage increase, you just do 4 divided by I guess the original, if you want to say. So it's 4, 8, 12, let's say 16. So it's about 25%. So it's a 25% increase. So you know, therefore, that Afghanistan, the current temperature to 2050, it's increased by 25%. So if you're going to compare it with Armenia and French Southern Territories, So this is something to note as well. So it can get confusing to look at all the numbers. So let's just cross Armenia here and French Southern Territories. So Armenia is from 14 to 19, so that's about 5%. Sorry, that's about a 5-degree increase. So 5-degree divided by, so that's from there to there is 5 degrees. So you do 5 divided by 14. So let's say 5 divided by 15. It's about 15. So it's 33, right? So it's 33% increase. So the question saying, be a greater percentage increase between current and future temperatures within protected area networks of Armenia. No, 25% is not larger than 33%. That's why B is incorrect. If we look at French Southern Territories, it's a 1 degree increase, which means 1 divided by 6 is about, what's 1 divided by 6? So if 1 divided by 5 is 20%, 1 divided by 6 is like what, 18%? So it's about, let's say 18% increase. I think I wrote this down earlier as well. Hopefully it's about 15%, 15. But my math is obviously a bit hard when I don't have a calculator in front of me. But you guys, you can't use calculators. So it's a ballpark figure about 15%. So you can see that it says it's a lower. So if 25% is not lower than 18, that's why it's incorrect. What we're left with is C. So protected area networks in cooler regions of the country. And that's true because we're told in the legend, remember, the reason why I included this table here is I just want to make sure that when you sit the GAMSAT, please read the figure legend and what the table is telling you. Because this is where people trick up. I know under the GAMSAT condition, it's stressful, but make sure to read the legend carefully because that's where people get tricked. So does anybody have any questions or queries about this question before we move on to the next one? Because I know this one, it's hard in 2 minutes to correctly do it. But if you have any questions, we can probably quash them or any queries right now before we move on to the next one. Okay, so I'll just move on to the next one. If the question does come to you, you can just post it into the chat or into the Q&A and we can go through it at the end. So it might come to you in a second. So this question here, the reason why I put an asterisk is because technically speaking, this equation is for global warming. It's not for warming of Australia's protected area network. So you're getting very, very, very specific here. So technically you can't use this equation for this sort of data. But in saying that, the reason why I chose this is because this is a typical GAMSAT question. The mechanics of a GAMSAT question here is correct. It's just the data I've used. Don't use this equation for individual points. You have to use it for a global scale. But for a GAMSAT mechanical kind of question, this is definitely one they love to ask. Piece of information. So this is like a section 3 question. So this one is more so a section 1 question, whereas this here is a section 3 question, because this one requires you to use some rearranging of the equation or formulae. And you have to find, in this instance, we're looking for flux density, which is represented by change in F. So we have here, so just take note as well, that also we've done a lot of assumptions here. We've made the assumption that water vapor contribution is negligible. CO2 is ubiquitous in the atmosphere. It would affect all regions equally. These areas are all polluted with CO2 equally. Global warming apparently is entirely confined to Australia. I made a lot of assumptions that would not fly in a proper way to use this equation. But again, a mechanical type of GAMSAT question, this is how you get it. So I see here we've got a 10, 100, and 1,000, which is fantastic because one of those answers is correct. Does anybody want to walk through their rationale here? Anyone want to take the plunge? I'll give you a chance. I'll give you a second. Please, if you do want to take the plunge, go for it, because it's the best way to, I guess, to see how you're doing and maybe improve it. If not, if you've done it correctly, to see if you've done it correctly. There's other ways to do it. So if anybody would like to take the floor, take it now. I'll give you about 10 seconds, 10, 15, if everyone wants to take the plunge. If not, I can give you my answer. Let's see. Anybody want to take the plunge? Ooh. I might have to start offering you guys money. I'll give you $1 million. All right, next person to give the answer, I'll give $1 million. I mean, $1 million. I'm not going to specify which currency. All righty, I'll go through it. So with this sort of question, if you were seeing this question in the GAMSAT, first thing to do is identify the unknowns, pretty much, and what you're looking at. So one thing I will do, so the important thing here is the, go back, erase pen. So the important thing here is obviously the equation and the fact that we're looking for the flux density. So our unknown is this. So this is our unknown. So this is what we're looking for. And we've been told we're looking for Australia network. Now, first of all, a lot of students, especially in the GAMSAT or candidates, sorry, don't make the mistake that I almost made. So where's Australia? I can't even read. There we go. Don't make the mistake and think it's Austria, because a lot of people think that Austria and Australia are the same country. They're not. There's a little I. There's a LIA here, so they're different countries. So make sure you put your eyes onto this part of the page. So the GAMSAT is digital, so you're going to have a computer screen, and I think they give you a page or 2 pages to scribble on. So make sure you just scribble this on there, so you don't get confused or get lost, because you might look at the page and see 1 million numbers and you're like, oh, damn it, there's so many numbers. So what we would first do is let's plug in the numbers. So what's TS? So TS is the current surface temperature. So TS is going to equal 28.7. But because the units here, you can see that the units are in a scale of times 10, if you will. We don't have to be too perfect with the numbers. So I'm going to say that it equals about 30. It's just easier to work with these numbers. If it was a very, very specific number, you might want to leave it there. But because you're jumping up from 10 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000, you don't want to use decimal placing and stuff. It's just confusing. So our TS is 30. Our change in TS is, it says here, well, our change in TS is going to be the difference between current and 2050. So that's going to be, if we look there, so 31.3 minus 28.7 is about 2.6. So let's say 2.6. Oops. Again, it's easier to just assume it's about 3 degrees. And you can see why. 33, the numbers we can play with, because 30 is divisible by 30 is divisible by 3, so it's easy to work with. Now, if we look at the equation here, if we substitute our value, so this is change in TS. So we have this, we know this, and we just have to find this. So let's just substitute. So 3 degrees equals 30 over, and over here, let's make it into a number that we can work with. How about we make it 930? And then change in the flux. So what we're left with here, and what I've done is I've left the units in the GAMSAT. It's important, if the question requires you to have a specific unit, leave the units in your working out. But in this instance, it just says units here. So we don't have to worry about the unit. But if the GAMSAT says here unit is kilometers per hour per second or something, and over here it's like meters per hour per second, you got to make sure you write the correct working out. So if you don't, then you're going to stuff up. So when you're preparing, write the correct working out. So what we have therefore is we just have to rearrange the equation to solve for this. So all we have to do now is just figure out, so 30 over 930. So a quick way to look at it is 30 over 90 is 1/3. So 30 over 90, but this is 900. So 30 over 930, you just add another 0. So it's about 1/30th. So that's the quickest way to do it. So all you got to do then is divide this side by 130 and divide this side by 130. So what you end up doing is the reciprocal. So 30 times 3 I mean, it is going to be about 30.33. So the answer is somewhere of the ballpark between 90 to 100. So that's how you do it. So 90 to 100 units. So your answer is B. But this is a lot of generalization. The reason why I can get away with about 90 is because we know the units are of a scale of multiples of 10. So it doesn't matter that I kind of averaged or rounded off, but it depends on the question. If this answer was 60, 70, 80, 90, or 70, 80, 90, 100, you've got to be a bit more specific, and you might have to use scientific notation. But that's for another day. In our future webinars, I'll show you how to use scientific notation correctly and logarithmic scales and all that sort of stuff. Now, does anybody have a question with the working out here? Anybody want to add their kind of style? Anything else you'd like to point out? Maybe I did something wrong. Anything else you'd like to say? The floor is open to you. If you'd like to point something out. Yep, Ramsha.
Hey, so whenever I do my working out and writing like an approximate or doing estimation like calculations to get an approximate answer to that match the MCQs, like the given answers, I sometimes like get caught up with how much we can like, you know, round them off the numbers, the top and bottom, especially when the divisions ones. Sometimes I feel like, okay, maybe like to make it easier for myself, if I increase the top number by one number, so how much should I increase the bottom one to give me, you know, like some sort of like a similar answer to the given answers?
So the best advice I can give is use what works for you. And the reason why I say that is because I don't want to tell somebody this is the correct way, because there's a million ways to peel an orange. If that works for you and it gives you the correct answer 95% of the time, do it. In the GAMSAT, you really don't have much time, because you realistically, for the section 3 question, 2 minutes per question, you realistically don't have much time. So if that works for you, then use it. But if you're finding out that the technique you're using only works for 50% of the questions you answer, then you probably have to find another technique. But if that's working for you, then use it. And because I've seen so many different techniques from students that just works. And in a GAMSAT, sometimes you have to take risks. So straight away as well, also, when you look at something like this, you can straight away see that, well, if you've got 30 over 930, it's going to be a very small number. So you know, therefore, that if you're dividing a small number, so by 3, it means you're going to have to end up with a larger number. So you know straight away you can cross off 10, because if you're dividing, so 3 divided by, so if you're doing this way, you know straight away it's not going to be 10. So what you've said, Ramsha, works, but hopefully, does that technique usually work for every question that you use it for?
Depends on the type of a question. Like sometimes you have very specific answers, you know, just by the difference of, let's say, 0.2. Then for those questions, you have to be very careful how much you're rounding the numbers off to get the approximate answer. So it gets a little bit trickier. But generally, approximation works. Like if I do, let's say for this question, I didn't do 930. I went with like 929, and which gave me like an approximate answer of like 60.
Okay.
So more than 10 units, but it's less than 1,000. So then I would pick my answer and, like, you know, in that way.
Interesting. Yeah. So that definitely works. If you think that works, that works. So that's fantastic, which is good. So did you get 100 units?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's perfect as well. And another trick as well, so just to air out the confusion, 3 divided by 1 over 30 is the same as saying the reciprocal 3 times 30. So it's just the reciprocal, so we just flip it. So these are little mathematical tricks in the GAMSAT you can use to kind of help you get the correct answer. But what I'll do now is, thanks for the input, Ramsha, that's much appreciated. Hopefully in the next question now, we're going to look at graphs. Now, this question, if I just go to the next one, if you do have another question about that table, you can post it in a Q&A. We'll go through it at the end. So we've got 2 more questions left for the graphs, and then I'll probably let you go. It has been a long night, but so this graph, when I was again browsing through Nature, as you do, just browsing through the columns, I saw this. It just popped up in my face, and I'm like, oh my god, I have to use this as a GAMSAT question. Like I would straight away, I'm like, I'm going to use this. So I did adapt the table. If you do want to read the paper, it did come out about 25 years ago now. My goodness, I was a baby back then. So 25 years ago. So a lot of these were probably babies as well. So it's about the various possible shapes of bird flight. I'm pretty sure in the 25 years since, there's been a lot of developments in the shape of bird flight, but you can see from graph A that it's showing you there's different types of bird flight shapes. There's a U shape, a J shape, an L shape, and a flat shape. And it's doing it across the x-axis speed and the y-axis power. And in this instance, it's measured via meters per second. Speed and power per mass is watts per kilogram. Now, just important to note that just for your information, I guess, U-shaped is what a plane uses. So aircrafts use a U-shaped form of flight. So it's amazing how birds and planes obviously like use the same way of flight, you know, physics. It's incredible, right? Just note that B graphs the mechanical power of a pigeon and magpie exerted in flight against speed. So you've got pigeon theory, you've got magpie theory, and you've got magpie experiment. And over here, we've got a little line showing you this is where magpies hover. So, you know, hovering is just stationary. So hovering is a bird at stationary point. So you can see that if it's stationary, it's at zero speed. So they're hovering at this speed. So just note that the continuous line, so this means that it's empirical, which is experimental, and the dashed lines are theory. So keep that in mind. So what I'll do is there's going to be 2 questions. For those watching at home, 1 and 2. Now, I purposely made the second question difficult. And the reason why I did that is because I want to show you it's important to have a mathematical basis to your GAMSAT, because a lot of students don't. And in recent years, the GAMSAT has become more mathematical. So we'll go through it, don't worry, if you can't get the correct answer, but I'll give you 4 minutes. So 2 minutes for the first one and 2 minutes for the next one. I'll start the poll and we'll see how you go. So ready, set, and go. Okay, so 5 more seconds, we'll move on to the last question. You got 2 minutes for this question, but don't worry if you can't answer it in the 2 minutes. I purposely made this difficult. I felt sorry, so I put this down at the bottom, a note as well. So you have 30 seconds. Hopefully you guys can. Sweet, we've got an answer. Couple more of you guys. So we've got 15 seconds. Go on, 10 more, 5 more seconds. Let's see what answers you guys can put. So 5 more seconds, guys. I'll give you 5 when it gets to 4:15 to see what answers you can put through. Sweet. And I'll stop it in 5 more seconds. All right, sweet. I'll stop the poll there. Okay, let's see how you went. So, you know what? This question, if you get in a GAMSAT, this is one of those questions that if you get it correct, it will scale you up so high. It's the all, you know, GAMSAT is literally high stakes, all or nothing, right? So I'll probably go back here. So let's just go for the first question. It says, based on the information provided, the empirical, which just means experimental, graph for magpies most closely describes what shape of flight. So we have, well, the answer is either U or L, which we have from you guys. So clearly, if you take a look here, J-shaped has this shape here. So obviously it's not J-shaped and it's not flat clearly. So you can see this is what we're looking at in the graph. So this part here. So can somebody please tell me why they went with their answer? Because one of you guys are correct. Anybody want to take the plunge? Walk me through this graph. Just walk me through the characteristics of these graphs. Yep, Ramsha?
Okay, my understanding of U and L is that if you look at the graph, L is sort of gets a flat line at the bottom, whereas it has a dip and then it goes up, which matches Magpie's experiment.
Okay. So you, what answer did you go with?
I went with U-shape.
U-shaped. Okay. Does anybody, before we go through the answer, thanks for your input, Ramsha. Does anybody else want to give me their, because somebody said L-shaped, so one of you guys are correct. So it could be Ramsha, it could be the mystery person.
I went with the L-shaped because I was looking at where the U-shaped graph on A doesn't start at the y-axis, so I kind of just went with that. And then I was kind of wondering as well with the hover that it would be kind of, because it was hovering, it would be like on a straight line, so that's why I kind of went with L then. I don't know, that was my
No. You.
National.
So you and Ramsha can like fight for the win. Who's got the correct answer? But the correct answer. Thanks. So how do you pronounce? So how do I pronounce your name?
Ailish.
Ailish, because it's Irish, right? It's a very Irish name. Yeah, because I work with an Irish nurse here in our clinic as well, and she's got a very, very Irish name too. And sometimes I read the paper, I'm like, is that what? And you must get it all the time as well. But thanks for the input. So the answer is L-shaped. Now here is why the answer is L-shaped. This is a good GAMSAT question because, again, ASA loves to ask these questions to trick you. So just make sure when you look at figures and graphs, analyze the graphs carefully. So in this instance, what we see with the, say, the U-shape is you've got a speed here that starts off low and the power is this power. Then you get to some intermediate speed and then you get to a high speed, which has greater power than hovering. Whereas L-shaped, you see that the hovering speed is here, and then you see that the speed at which it's, say, very, very fast. So you've got your intermediate speed here, which is here, but you can notice that the power drops. It doesn't come back up at high speeds. Whereas the U-shaped, it does. It goes above the power of hovering. So that's the biggest difference here. U-shaped, the power at hovering is lower than the power at high speeds. Whereas with L-shaped, the power at hovering, so this bird requires more power to stay stationary than to go at a high speed. So it looks like here, aircrafts require more power to go at higher speeds, which makes sense. They're massive, right? Whereas the L-shaped, it requires less power to go fast. So you can see here, if we take a look at the magpie experiment, hovering is over here. Power is like, let's say, just under 20. But then you see that the magpie experiment, it doesn't pick up. So this is experimental, not theory. So in theory, the it looks like magpie in theory is U-shaped. I mean, you could argue U or J-shaped, but it looks like it's U or J. But realistically, experimentally, because it doesn't reach a speed, the power to reach this speed isn't higher than hovering, we assume it's L-shaped. So that's why C is the correct answer. So pigeon is quite clearly U-shaped. This one, I mean, I'd say this one is probably U-shaped as well. It's like a pseudo U-shape, but you could say J. We have here from Rani, L reduces after the drop, so it's not L. That's a good take, Rani. But if we're looking at, again, if we look at sorry, I think you posted a couple of minutes ago before I saw that. But yeah, so this is why it's L rather than U. Yeah, sorry, I just saw that now. I shouldn't have said that out loud. But thanks for the contribution, Rani, anyway. So GAMSAT loves to ask questions like this because it tricks students. So make sure if you get a question like this in your GAMSAT, just be careful. Be careful. Look at the nuances of the graph and the figure. Now, this one, I purposely designed this question because it's a question that you can get in the GAMSAT that requires you to have some mathematical knowledge because maths is a prerequisite. And this morning, when I designed this question a while ago, I didn't have this. I put this morning because I felt bad. I'm like, I'll give you a bit of a chance. So I gave you, so generally, ASA might not be this nice. They might not tell you what the equation of a parabola is because I just told you here it's parabolic flight. So it says here a new bird species has been discovered with parabolic flight shape. It exerts 25 watt per kilogram of power when hovering stationary in flight. At intermediate speeds, the bird exerts 15 watt per kilogram of power and flies at 5 meters per second. So if this is the GAMSAT, make sure you're highlighting these. These are the important things you need to know if you're trying to skim through the question. Which equation closely represents this flight? You've been given two equations here, equation of parabola and in vertex form. Now we have answers B and C. but those answers are incorrect, which I wasn't too shocked about, because I kind of threw you guys under the bus. I chucked this question at you. If you guys had studied maths before you came to the session, I told you we'd look at a parabolic question, you probably answer it correctly. But because I tried to be a meanie, I'll just explain to you just in the last couple of minutes, because I don't want to drag this out too long. You've been here for a while. Thanks for pushing on. So I'll go through the explanation of how I came to the answer. So the answer is D, but I'll explain to you now why. So what I'll do is I'll clear out. Here's a fresh screen. So so we've got here from Ramsha, in conclusion, GAMSAT answers are not what they look like, 100%. Every single GAMSAT question usually is structured, generally speaking. You get, say, a couple of questions. The first one, they want to pay you the mark. It's probably straightforward. Then the next couple, there's a tweak, there's a trick. So this is where this comes into play. So if you're looking at a GAMSAT question like this, make sure you highlight the important information. So you've got, it exerts 25 watt per kilogram of power, hovering, stationary. So what we know is that it's parabolic flight. So we know straight away that it's going to have something that's a, say, U-shaped or something like that. So it's going to be U-shaped flight. So U-shaped. So we know that it hovers at 25 watts per kilogram. In the exam, because now it's not paper exam, it's a computer screen, you might have a piece of paper and you can just scribble on it. So just scribble, so 25, let's just scribble, this is where it's hovering. So we know, therefore, the coordinates. So remember, this is an X and Y, so X and Y. The coordinates of this dot are, so X is going to be 0 and Y is 25. So keep that in mind, that's the coordinates. So it says here as well, at intermediate speeds, so in the middle, the bird exerts, so it's at this point. So we've got this point, now we've got this point. It exerts 15 watt per kilogram of power and flies at 5 meters per second. So if we come here, so 5 meters per second, and sorry, my line is very shocking, and it's got 15, so it's going to say it's here. So if we draw the parabola now, it's going to go something like that. And we know it's a parabola shape, parabolic shape. So it's going to go like, oh, I missed it completely, but you get the point, and then go dip like that. So obviously this, let's just assume this is 5. Sorry, so this is 5. Let's just assume that's 5. So you can say that the coordinates of this point are therefore going to be 5x value. So the x is 5 and the y value is 15. Now we've got enough information to actually solve the equation of parabola. So first and foremost, we know that the parabola is positive. It's not a negative parabola. It's not going. It's not going like an upside down U shape. So our minimum coordinates now, so it's not a maximum, it's a minimum, are 5 and 15. So we've got our equation for vertex form. So it's saying that it's y equals a x minus h squared plus k. Now it's important to know, you might say, will ASA ever give me a question like this? I mean, it's highly unlikely, but they might. And the reason why I included this is because you have to brush up on your mathematics, because they can 100% ask you something about this, even though every question can be asked. But just keep in mind, if you brush up on your mathematics, if a question like this comes up, you get it correct, you're going to get scaled highly. So keep that in mind. So what I didn't include here is what h and k represents. So h is so when you've got the vertex, so the minimum of the vertex, h is the x value and k is the y value. So what we have here, therefore, if we substitute, y equals a x minus h is 5 squared plus our k, which is 15. So now what we have to do is we've got to solve for a. So if we solve for a, what we do is we just substitute our known value on the parabola. We know that there's a value here that we do know. So we know that, and it's easy because it has a 0 in it, because 0 means it's going to cancel everything. So we've got our known value. So let's substitute X for 0 and Y for 25 so we can find out what A equals. So if we go 25 equals A, so this is going to be 0, so -5 squared plus 15. So therefore, it's going to be 25 equals A, so 25A. So -5 squared is 25 plus 15. So if you bring this across, it's going to be minus, so 10 equals 25A. Therefore, A equals, so 10 over 25, and you can see straight away that's 2/5. So if we substitute this into the equation now, it's going to be 2/5. So that's 5 and that's 15. So your answer is going to be D. Now that's how you show it in vertex form. If you want to show it in the complete form, so in parabola, all you got to do is just expand it. So I will just write here y equals, so you can put 0.4, x minus 5 squared plus 15. So then you can just say, well, x minus 5 squared, if you open that up, it's going to be, sorry, if we open this up, it's going to be, oh, sorry, squared on the outside. Doing this wrong. So it's going to be y equals 0.4 x, so let's open it, so x squared, so you just have to open this, so x squared minus 10x plus 25, yep, plus 15, and the final answer, you just have to open that up, is going to be y equals 0.4x squared minus 4x. I might actually write this properly. I'll write it here. So y equals 0.4x squared minus 4x oh, sorry, this was 0.4x squared minus 10x plus 25 plus 15. And then we're going to, yep, times it together. Yep, 0.4. Yep. I'm confusing myself because I scratched it down before. So I've got this minus 4x plus 10 plus 15. Because if you open up that bracket, equals, finally, it's going to equal 0.4x squared minus 4x plus 25. This is why I left it in vertex form, because if you didn't do it in vertex form, it'd just be very muddy. Usually in GAMSAT, I probably just want you to do this form because you can see it clearly with the graph. So you could, if you did it in a different way, you could have seen straight away, if you got to this point, it has to be 15 here. So you can quickly cross off these two. So you know that this is going to be 15. And then you can see here as well, it's going to be minus 5x squared. And then you'd have to probably get to this point to get the correct answer. So it's a 50-50 shot. Now, before we end, I just have a question. I know I probably completely confused everyone, but it is recorded. You can watch it back. And maybe the whole selling point here is please just brush up on your maths. Because mathematics is becoming very, very important for GAMSAT. Does anybody have a question before we move on to the end, I guess? Any other questions about maths or anything about this that you'd like to ask? No? Okay, so I'll leave it at that. It is recorded. I'm sorry I gave this question, but in GAMSAT, sometimes they're not supposed to be nice. ACE is not meant to be nice. It's supposed to see who deserves to get into medicine, right? So if you put in the effort, the 1%ers, you should do well. So that's the take home. So just to end, I guess, thanks everybody for coming. I'm really sorry again about the Zoom link. I'll make sure next time we send it a few days in advance. And we have a question as well, where would the recording be available? Don't worry, we'll send you the recording next week. We'll send you the link. So we'll give you the link to access the recording. And if not, it'll be available, I think, from our website anyway. But we'll make sure, I'll send you the link next week, and I'll make sure you get the email. And the take home is, do the 1%ers for your vocabulary, do the 1%ers when it comes to graphs, the mathematics, and just make sure that you just keep, if it's your first time sitting the GAMSAT, get an idea. And if you need any further help, you can contact us here at the Institute of Medical Education. We're here in Queensland. You can come to us in person if you like, if you're in Queensland, or email us at info@imemedical.com. Go on our website for the free material. You can go on all our social media for free material as well. So please don't forget about utilizing that resource. So without, I guess, any last questions before we end it? Fantastic. Thanks, guys. We're going to have another webinar next month, another free session as well. But if you need further help, you can take a look at our programs and see if that interests you. Have a fantastic weekend, guys. Take care, and we'll see each other soon, hopefully.